I was going all antidote for savages early on you. Well, welcome, crew, guys, gals, ghouls, friends, fiends, foes, whoever may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I'm aboard the mothership. Carry your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly. Mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, the 2nd March. Monday, the 3rd of March, for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. So if you're listening live right now, you may be listening to us on KPNL Radio, which you can find at KPNL Radio, kpnl-db.com. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and if you want to listen to us at any time, you can find us basically where you listen to your podcasts. I don't know if you guys made the show last night, but it was epic. We had Psychic Chris Garcia on, so if you didn't check it out, go back and check that out. It was a really, really good show. Tonight it's story time with me, TessaTNT, and we are reading Paul Roland's The Nazis and the Occult, the Dark Forces Unleashed by the Third Reich. For YouTube, Facebook, anyone that might block this is for educational purposes only. Yeah, let's go on and get into it, shall we? So last week, let me make sure it's going here. All right. So last week, for our Spreaker peaks, they got shut down before we finished over here on StreamYard. So I'm going to go back just a paragraph or whatever, and that way they'll be able to hear what they missed last week. So Hitler stood beside him like a man in a trance, writes Ravenscoft, a man over whom some dreadful magic spell had been cast. His face was flushed and his brooding eyes shone with an alien emanation. Stein became aware that the spirit was radiating a ghostly ectoplasmic light, which Hitler absorbed into the core of his being. The transformation was terrifying. Stein feared he was witnessing Hitler's possession by the Antichrist, though Ravencroft fails to explain how a Christian relic could attract satanic forces. Hitler's satanic initiation. The lance, we are told, acted like a divining rod for the dark forces which are continually seeking entry into our world of matter. In the summer of 1912, Adolf Hitler was clearly ready to submit to its influence. Why then did he continue to behave like an impotent, hysterical, neurotic even after he had enlisted in the army in 1914, when his dark star ought surely to have been in the ascendant? Despite his claim to have finally answered his true calling, he acted so erratically that his comrades kept their distance, and his superiors repeatedly passed him over for promotion because they knew the men would refuse to follow him, as fellow soldier Hans Lind later recalled. Hitler was considered a peculiar fellow. He sat in the corner of our mess holding, his head in his hands, in deep concentration. Suddenly he would leap up and, running about excitedly, say that in spite of all our efforts, victory would be denied us, for the invisible foes of the German people were greater danger than the biggest cannon of the enemy. On other occasions, he sat with his helmet pulled over his head, quite oblivious to our world, buried so deeply within himself that none of us could arouse him. We all cursed him and found him intolerable. There was this white crow among us that did not go along with us when we damned the war. Were these the actions of the Antichrist or the devil's disciple? If so, Satan had made a very poor choice. Moreover, if Hitler was the all-powerful instrument of such diabolical force, why did it take more than 20 years for him to claw his way to the chancellorship? There can be no doubt that Hitler was possessed. Those who witnessed his powers to whip up a mob attested to that fact. He was driven by demons of this world, not the next. They were the demons of resentment, fear, self-loathing, and all-consuming hatred. Fact is, Hitler didn't need help from the dark side. He had enough destructive energy within him to wreak havoc on a scale unimaginable, even in the days of Vlad the Impaler, Tamburlaine, and Genghis Khan. The year before Stein witnessed the terrible transformation in Schatzkammer, Hitler, it is said, had begun the process of initiation, which would culminate in his possession by the Spear. With Precht as his mentor, the 22-year-old Hitler was introduced to the esoteric mysteries of alchemy and the significance of the symbolism encoded in the Grail legend. But his was not to be the path of patience and self-discipline, leading ultimately to self-realization and enlightenment, but the perilous shortcut through the use of narcotic stimulant, peyote, whose active principle was mescaline, the drug of choice favored by the high priests of sex magic such as Aleister Crowley. Adolf in Wonderland. In Ravencroft's version of events, the final act in Hitler's Faustian pact with Lucifer takes in all the characteristics of a grim fairy tale, as he describes young Adolf venturing into the forest of Wachau near Vienna with Stein by his side in search of the Waldskrat, forest troll, who had introduced him to the pleasures of peyote. It was the spring of 1913, the last idyllic spring before the outbreak of the Great War, and Hitler had decided to say goodbye to an old friend, Hans Lotz, before he left to try his luck in Munich. Lotz was an herbalist who lived in a cabin in the country 2 years earlier. He had literally stumbled upon Hitler, who had been sleeping rough in the woods, and invited him back to his rustic home, where he prepared a witch's brew from the peyote roots that Precht had provided. Now he greeted him again as the master would a favorite pupil, his eyes glinting with pride through the flowing white hair, a grin ceasing the features of his gnarled, bark-like skin. While Lotz cooked the vegetable broth, Hitler detailed his experiences with the mind-expanding hallucinogen to his young companion. Stein said attentively as Hitler described the shock at finding himself adrift in the dreamlike landscape of his own psyche, where every aspiration and anxiety could take on a symbolic form. One can only wonder what sights and sensations manifested in the mind of such a man, on the brink of starvation, half crazed with delusions of grandeur, and suffering from persecution mania, but we have the personal accounts of several aspiring mystics to give a hint of what the young Hitler might have experienced, assuming, of course, that this event actually took place. You know, Hitler was taking the stuff, mescaline, Crowley observed. I heard it from a reliable friend in the OTO. OTO? Inquired Huxley. The Ordo Templi Orientis. The Ordo Templi Orientis was founded by Theodor Roos, Franz Hartmann, and Karl Kellner in 1895, promoted the practice of sex magic, and is not to be confused with the more influential order of the next New Templars, founded by Lans Liebenfels. My local branch, you might say, and their connections with the Nazis are nobody's business. They almost founded the party, or at least subverted it. Do you know that 2 of their chief men personally trained Adolf Hitler before he was a stuttering Austrian oaf, a shoddy bohemian, and pervert to boot? They taught him oratory, rhetoric, and, under the influence of this drug that will shortly, my dear, I'll just set your eyes on fire, gave him his demons. Then Huxley said, all the disparate romanticism that in its waning found expression in the irrational, in secret cults, has made its kingdom here. Fascism is, after all, the triumph of decadence, the final madness of Bohemia. So that carnage of Ahriman may be complete precisely. But again, there are those who doubt that such a conversation ever took place. They state categorically that Newberg and Crowley ended their friendship in 1914 and point to Crowley's diaries, which record the meeting with Aldous Huxley in Berlin as being Saturday, 4th of October 1930, not 1938. Despite these discrepancies, it is almost certain Crowley was responsible for introducing Huxley to mescaline. Hitler, however, probably never took peyote in his life, although he was certainly fatally crippled by his addiction to prescription drugs in the last years of the war, thanks to his quack physician, Dr. Morell. Seance on a wet afternoon. Oh no. Wonder what happened to the Facebook. That is odd. Make sure it's still going over here on the Spreaker. Weird. No words of mine can describe the satisfaction I felt. I'm not ashamed to say that. Carried away by the emotion of the moment, I sank down on my knees and thanked heaven in the fullness of my heart for the favor of having been permitted to live at such a time. And that was Hitler on receiving his call-up papers in August 1914, Mein Kampf. Ravencroft's reimagining of history returns to the remotely recognizable reality with Hitler's ecstatic reaction to the declaration of war in 1914, and his experiences in the trenches, for which he was awarded the Iron Cross First Class. But at war's end, the facts once more are enshrouded in myth as the principal players in this supernatural melodrama reassemble to renew their Faustian pact in a scene worthy of pulp horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. The year is 1919, and the members of a sinister occult brotherhood are holding a seance in Munich, in the hope of making contact with their hidden masters on the higher planes of existence. They call themselves the Thule Gesellschaft, after a legendary prehistoric Nordic civilization, and comprise leading members of the community, including judges, police chiefs, university professors, industrialists, army officers, and the aristocracy. All have sworn to rid Germany of Zionist influence and to promote German nationalism by violent means if necessary. They are led by a fiercely anti-Semitic middle-aged Bavarian journalist named Dietrich Eckart, who is destined to be the mentor to Adolf and the future editor-in-chief of the official Nazi newspaper, the Völkischer Beobachter. Eckhart's frustration and frustrated ambitions to be a playwright led him to alcoholism, morphine addiction, and a stay in the mental hospital. He thought of himself as an intellectual, but he betrayed his true nature when he told a gathering in Brimsell wine cellar that spring, "We need a man at the head who can stand the sound of a machine gun. The rabble need to get fear in their pants. We can't use an officer because people don't respect them anymore. The best man for the job would be a worker who knows how to talk. He doesn't need much brains. He must be a bachelor. Then we'll get the women." I don't know what's going on with that. On the evening of their seance, he is joined by two mugre Polish generals with an interest in spiritualism and a strong sympathy for the German nationalist cause, Generals Skorpadsky and Bijewski. Seated them around the table in the darkened room is the founder of the group, Rudolf Glauer, the future editor of the group's publications, Konrad Ritzler, and Eckhart's protege, German-Russian refugee Alfred Rosenberg, and that's 1893 to 1946, who has to become a formative influence in Nazi racist ideology. Although the Thule group was not a magical order in the mold of the Golden Dawn, the members shared their counterparts' fascination with paranormal phenomena. their obsession with secrecy, and their practice of creating exotic histories for themselves. Lauer, for example, insisted on being addressed as Count Heinrich von Sebendorf, or Sabotendorf, although in reality he was the working-class son of a Dresden engine driver. He also professed a profound knowledge of esoteric lore and muttered unintelligibly about having been initiated into the mysteries during a sojourn in Turkey. But in truth, he had merely digested passages from the Theosophist, sacred text, the secret doctrine, and regurgitated it with Germanic embellishments. The 3-volume treatise on the origin and nature of the universe had been channeled by the eccentric medium Madame Blavatsky and contained the germ of an idea that the Nazis were to expand upon and pervert on their own ends. This was a myth of the master race. Lauer simply appropriated Blavatsky's cosmology and her concept of the 7 root races of man, or German consumption, claiming that it provided the ancient Edda legends on which, in his racist revisionist history, the myth of the 12th century, in which he claimed that the superior Aryan race had originated from the lost continent of Atlantis, for where its ships sailed forth to be found the earliest centers of civilization. But on the night of the seance, these men had something other than politics on their mind. While they looked on in a hushed expectation, the naked medium, a ruby-faced, muscular Russian farmer's wife, sank into a deep trance to allow herself to be taken over by her spirit guides. It was their voices which now issued from her throat, each distinctive and talking in its mother tongue, of which their host had no knowledge. It was an impressive performance, more convincing even than the manifestations of gossamer white ectoplasm, which she usually produced. Lauer lost his nerve and attempted to break free of the circle, but Eckhart restrained him. It was then that the ghostly apparition of a former member of the group formed in their midst. They all recognized it as Prince von Thurn, und Taxis, who had been murdered only months before. His voice was also unmistakable. In High German, a version of the language with which the Russian peasant woman was unfamiliar, the disembodied head of the prince declared that the new leader of Germany would claim the Holy Lands and embark on a campaign of world conquest. A moment later, his form faded back into the darkness and was replaced by another disincarnate spirit, that of the Countess von Westrup. Excuse me. She too had been an active member of the group before she was murdered by communists. She had returned to announce the imminent arrival of the Messiah for whom they had been waiting so long, but she added a warning that their new leader would be exposed as a false prophet and would drag the nation into the abyss. With a sharp intake of breath, the medium awoke from her trance and the apparitions disappeared. No one moved or spoke for several minutes. Hitler takes the stage. Where he comes from, no one can say. From a prince's palace, perhaps, or day laborer's cottage. But everyone knows he is the Führer. Everyone cheers him, and thus one day he will present himself. We, for all of us, are waiting, full of longing, who feel Germans' present distress deep in our hearts, so that thousands and hundreds of thousands of brains picture him. Millions of voices call for him. One single German soul seeks him. And that was by Kurt Hess, 1922, from Joachim Fest's Face of the Third Reich, 1972. Paul Eckhart and his subserviaries, or subversives, were groping in the dark for a sign of their future savior. Adolf Hitler was standing in the shadows in the back room at the Old Rosenbad Tavern, in the Herrenstrasse, observing a group of backstreet radicals arguing over their lack of funds. It was the evening of 13 September 1919, and he had been sent there to report on their activities by his army paymasters, who were looking for an organization that they can infiltrate and manipulate for their own ends, namely to counter the growing tide of anti-nationalist sentiment among the working class. Hitler had witnessed an earlier meeting of the German Workers' Party, or DAP, the predecessors of the Nazi Party, which at the time had fewer than 60 members, and he had not been impressed by the quality of the debate or the views expressed by its guest speaker, Bavarian nationalist academic. In fact, he had returned merely to inform the committee that he had decided not to join their absurd little organization. Those who are tempted to romanticize Nazism would do well to remember the nature of the personalities who attended that fateful meeting, one of whom was Herr Bartlett, who swore by the efficacy of his sidereal pendulum, which he claimed could locate any Jew in a crowded room. Hitler availed himself of Bartlett's mystic powers. He called an aide and had many discussions with him on the racial question, such as the character of the men who were to guide the destiny of a nation. Hitler later recalled that early meeting in Mein Kampf. From the grim light of a tiny gas lamp, 4 people were sitting at a table when they once greeted him as a member of the German Workers' Party. The minutes of the last meeting were read, and the secretary gave a vote of confidence. Next came the Treasury report. All in all, the party possessed 7 marks and 50 pfennigs, for which the treasurer received a vote of confidence. This too was entered into the minutes. Terrible, terrible, this was club life of the worst sort. Was I to join such an organization? Returning to his barracks, he considered his future, which looked bleak in the extreme. That I was poor and without means seemed to me the most bearable part of it. But it was harder that I was numbered among the nameless, that I was one of the millions whom chance permits to live or summoned out of existence without even their closest neighbors condescending to take any notice of it. In addition, there was the difficulty which inevitably arose from the lack of schooling. After 2 days of agonized pondering and reflection, I finally came to the conviction that I had to take this step. The air of self-pity is positively suffocating. The Munich myth. Such was the personal myth Hitler was intent on creating, although, in fact, he had no choice in the matter. He had been ordered to take charge of the fledgling party by Army intelligence, who promised him practically unlimited financial backing and a loyal intake of new members who were all under orders too. With the financial backing of the army and a hired audience to applaud his speeches, Hitler's confidence as a public speaker grew in tandem with the party's fortunes. Reports of his early speeches reveal that he was yet to demonstrate the charismatic, demonstrative style that was to draw the slavering masses, but the major themes were already in evidence. A pathological hatred of Jews and a belief that they had stabbed Germany in the back to end war prematurely. A contemporary journalist wrote, "The lecturer Hitler gave a talk on Jewry, showing that wherever one looks, one sees Jews. The whole of Germany is governed by Jews. It is a scandal that the German workers, whether with hand or brain, let themselves be exploited by the Jews because the Jews have money. Jewish swindlers dominate the government. When the Jew was filled his pockets at the public till he drives the poor German worker into confusion, thus keeping himself in control of things." The lecturer also spoke about Russia and the responsibility for what happened there, the October Revolution. The Jews had made the revolution. Therefore, Germans must unite and fight against the Jews, or they would gobble up the last crumbs from the national table. The lecturer's concluding words were, "We shall carry on the struggle until the last Jew has been removed from the Reich, even if it comes to an insurrection or even revolution." The lecturer received great applause. Inevitably, such diatribes attracted the attention of Dietrich Eckart and his dualist nationalists, who, unknown to Hitler, were the puppet masters behind the party they had created to serve their nationalist ambitions. When Eckhart witnessed Hitler in action, he knew immediately that he had found his Messiah, and that pretty soon the nominal head of the DAP, railroad engineer Anton Dexler, and his co-founder Karl Harrer, was but the prophet and forerunner. Would be forced to concede control to their last recruit. Here is the one for whom I was but the prophet and the forerunner, Eckhart declared, alluding to John the Baptist and Jesus of Nazareth. Hitler was apparently equally enthusiastic, seeing in Eckhart a man who could be both his mentor and his spiritual brother. This Dietrich Eckhart is a man I can admire, Hitler told a friend. He appears to know the meaning of hatred and how to apply it. He was referring to Eckhart's gangster tactics and disrupting the commemoration for a murdered communist by having bags of bitches' blood thrown at posters of dead men to attract the attention of the city's male dog population, who would urinate on them. It was alleged that the assassination was none other than Eckhart himself. A mad little clown. Presumably, these extracurricular activities were unknown to the playwright's patrons, the bankers, businessmen, and intellectuals of Bavarian high society, to whom he eagerly introduced the somewhat befuddled Austrian corporal over the course of the following months. Some of Eckhart's gilt-edged friends were condescending, others merely curious, as they remarked on the striking resemblance between Hitler and the most famous screen comedian of the period, Charlie Chaplin. Even Mussolini was to comment on the similarity when he referred to Hitler as a mad little clown. Some must have wondered if this was a practical joke. Few were genuinely impressed by their friend's latest protege, but they willingly agreed to contribute to the anti-Jewish crusade. In return, each was promised whatever the cunning political agitator guessed they wanted to hear. A guarantee of lower interest rates, a pledge to disband the unions, a promise to return to traditional family values, and so on. Even the intellectuals were not immune to Nazi charm. Perhaps it was the frisson of being in proximity to danger or primal power which attracted them. Some fled abroad while there was still time. Others, such as the writer Hans Heinz Ewers, succumbed completely. Ewers, who went on to write the Nazi anthem, the Horst Wessel song, was under no illusion as to the nature of the party he had joined, sensing in it the strongest expression of the powers of darkness. Those who remained spellbound by the power and pageantry must have had a rude awakening. On 10 May 1933, when the Nazis burned the books of writers whose ideas they feared in 30 cities across the Reich, those intellectuals who had flirted with fascism should have recalled the words of Thomas Mann, who warned that when one begins by burned books, human beings will be next. Such rites were the clearest evidence yet that Nazism was not a political movement but a satanic cult in the true sense of the word. The primitive instinct to destroy what we fear because we do not understand it and cannot control it. 10 years earlier, Hitler was already on the road of power and his popularity was gathering momentum. It was only a matter of time before socio-economic factors created conditions sufficiently favorable for his accession. Eckhart did not live to see Hitler seize power. In the autumn of 1923, he lay dying, burned out by a life of addiction to alcohol and morphine. With his last breath, he invoked the old gods through his treasured Mecca stone, the black meteorite which he believed served as a portal between the worlds of spirit and matter. His last words were reputed to be, "Follow Hitler. He will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers of vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers. Do not mourn me, for I shall be influenced history more than any other German." An unholy trinity. Beware, you dogs, when the devil is loose in me, you will not curb him again. And that was by Joseph Goebbels. When Hitler's reputation as a public speaker grew during the early 1920s, he began to attract kindred spirits who believed destiny had led them to the man who would restore Germany to its former glory. Rudolf Hess and Martin Bormann were typical of the fawning, anonymous yes men with whom Hitler surrounded himself, the real inner circle who took on an active role in influencing policy and determining who would live and who would die were Himmler, Göring, and Goebbels. The first of this unholy trinity to pledge allegiance was the man his rivals called the Poison Dwarf. Joseph Goebbels first heard Hitler speak at a party debate in Bamberg and had been so swayed by the strength of his leader's argument that he immediately conceded defeat, swearing undying loyalty before the meeting was closed. The first and last time the future Minister of Misinformation would admit to being wrong on any matter in public. Goebbels was the art propagandist of Nazi regime, but it seems he also possessed a gift of prophecy. On one occasion, the only one he had foreseen, his first fateful meeting with his future Führer, which was to prove uncannily similar to the scene as it was unfold in real life. It was in the summer of 1918, and Goebbels was then a student at the University of Freiburg. He made his prediction in a novel called Michael, in which the idealistic young hero despairs of ridding his fatherland of Jewish influence until he meets a Masonic savior whose power of oratory awakens the sleeping nation. We can assume its author shared his hero's emotions on hearing Hitler speak for the first time. All of a sudden, the flow of his speech is unleashed. I am captivated. Honor, work, the flag. Are there still such things in this people from whom God has taken his blessing hand? The audience is aglow, hopes shine on grave faces. Someone clenches his fist, another wipes the sweat off his brow. An old officer weeps like a child. I'm getting hot and cold. I don't know what has happened to me. And the man up there speaks on, and whatever his budding in me takes shape. A miracle. Those around me are no longer strangers. They are brothers. I approach the rostrum and look into the man's face. No orator he, but a prophet. Sweat is pouring down his face. A pair of eyes glow in the pale face. His fists are clenched, and like the Last Judgment, word after word is thundering on, phrase after phrase. I do not know what to do. I seem demented. I begin to cheer, and no one seems astonished. From the rostrum he glances at me for an instant. Those blue eyes sear me like a flame. This is a command. I feel like I am reborn. I know now where my path leads me, the path of destiny. I appear to be intoxicated. All I remember is the man's hand clasping mine, both for life, and my eyes meet two large blue stars. Many years later, Goebbels recorded his initial impressions of the man to whom he was to devote his life and considerable energies. I thank fate that there is such a man. He is the creative instrument of fate and deity. I stand by him deeply shaken. That is how it is. I recognize him as my leader quite unconditionally. He is so deep and mystical. He knows how to express infinite truth. He seems like a prophet of old, and in the sky a big white cloud seems to take the shape of a swastika. Is this a sign of fate? How much elementary strength is there in this man compared to the intellectuals? On top of it all, his overwhelming personality. With such a man, one can conquer the world. To him I feel deeply linked. My doubts vanish. I cannot bear to have to doubt this man. Germany will live. Heil Hitler. Bowering, I think it says. It's hard to read this first letter. Retoring. Göring, I don't know. Hitler's words were spoken, word for word, as though from my own soul. That's Hermann Göring. It is unlikely that Hermann Göring shared Goebbels' idealistic image of Hitler as deep and mystical, or the instrument of infinite truth. The former great war fighter ace with the famous Reich squadron, whose comrades accused him of exaggerating his score of kills, and a strutting egotist of the First Order, he considered himself second to no man, with the exception of his Führer. "I have no conscience," he once declared. "My conscience is Adolf Hitler," but he saw Hitler as a leader, not as a mystic. "He joined the party because I was a revolutionary," he declared, "not because of my ideology or ideological nonsense." He had no beliefs other than the divine right of the aristocracy to the rule, and considered himself a Renaissance man, presumably in the mold of Caesar Borgia. He had a passion for good food, the finest cigars, hunting, and fine art, but he despised culture, by which he meant anything that sought to educate or edify. This is nothing else. He shared with Goebbels, who had famously said, "When I hear the word culture, I reach for my revolver." Goring had grown up on a magnificent estate and was accustomed to getting his way in all things. His own mother had the measure of him when she predicted that he would either be a great man or a great criminal. But he lacked purpose until he found it in the Führer. In return, he acted as a stabilizing influence when Hitler succumbed to one of his periodic panic attacks. The fiercely aristocratic Goring was evidently in the thrall of the formal corporal, curiously untroubled by the inequality in their backgrounds. But he was intimidated by Hitler's unpredictability and violent, irrational outbursts. He admitted in Hitler's presence, "My heart would sink into my trousers." It was rumored that Goring had a Jewish godfather with whom his mother had had an affair, and it was this which embittered him towards Jews in general. In their efforts to portray him as the jovial lord of the manor, historians tend to forget that it was Goring and not Himmler who implemented the program of concentration camp construction, and it was also Goring who established the dreaded Gestapo. He realized his role as a genial, avuncular figure, but it was a facade hiding a vicious and vindictive streak which could lash out at any moment. He celebrated his wedding by ordering an execution and kept a small black book on which he recorded the names of those he intended to eliminate at the next opportunity, giving rise to the saying, "In any other country you have to justify having a gun. In Goring's Germany you have to justify why you don't use one." His aristocratic background and reputation as a war hero lent the party a respectability which helped to attract funding from influential industrialists and the nobility. Pursued by demons. Hitler is an awakener of souls, the vehicle of messianic powers. He is the new leader sent by God to the German people in their hour of greatest need, and that was by Houston Stewart Chamberlain. It is one of the great ironies of world history that the man who had arguably the most profound influence on defining Nazi ideology was an Englishman, Houston Stewart Chamberlain, 1855 to 1927, was the son of an English admiral who had become a naturalized German citizen after marrying the daughter of Richard Wagner, with whom he shared an all-consuming passion for the dark side of German Romanticism. With most converts, he became more zealous than those born to the cause, leading him to state that God builds today upon the Germans alone. He was, by all accounts, hypersensitive and given to imagining that he was being pursued by the mythical creatures from which his famous father-in-law derived inspiration. Even the level-headed American journalist William L. Shirer, author of The Definitive History of the Period, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, took Chamberlain's ravings seriously. Chamberlain was given to seeing demons who, by his own account, drove him relentlessly to seek new fields of study. Once in 1896, when he was returning from Italy, the presence of a dream became so forceful that he got off the train in Gardone, set himself up in a hotel room for 8 days, and wrote feverishly on a biological thesis until he had the germ of the theme that would dominate all his later works, race and history. Since he felt himself goaded on by demons, his books were written in the grip of a terrible fever, a veritable trance, a state of self-induced intoxication, so that he was often unable to recognize them as his own work. It is a tragedy, then, that so much of his output was unworthy of a man of his energies and supposed intellect. It was Chamberlain's contention that the white race was superior in every respect, but that it too was degenerate. Only the Tudors were worthy of being called cultured, and were to be credited with fashionings and foundations of Western civilization. Even the Italian architects of the Renaissance were the Teutonic descent. Needless to say, he blamed the Jews for infecting the Indo-Europeans with impure blood and warned that if intermarriage continued, all non-Jews would eventually become a herd of pseudo-Hebraic mestizos, a people beyond all doubt degenerate physically, mentally, and morally. In 1899, he published his vile theories in what was to become the gospel of the Nazi movement. No one doubted him when he declared that foundations of the 19th century had been dictated to him by demons. It was Chamberlain who first propagated the ridiculous lie that Jesus was a blue-eyed, blonde-haired Aryan, and that only Germany was worthy of the blessing of a new Messiah. In the years prior to the outbreak of the Great War, Chamberlain thought he had identified his savior in the unlikely form of Kaiser Wilhelm II. He became the Kaiser's confidant and spiritual advisor at the time, as Rasputin was serving a similar role in the Russian palaces of power. While Rasputin advised restraint, Chamberlain urged the pompous and impetuous German monarch to act in defense of its country's honor. Chamberlain wanted war in order to see his adopted homeland seize its rightful place as master of Europe. He was to be bitterly disappointed. Then, in 1923, he met Adolf Hitler and declared that the savior of the Aryan race was at hand. The following day, he wrote to the Nazi leader, giving his blessing and betraying his naivety. "You have mighty things to do, but in spite of your willpower, I do not take you to be a violent man. There is a violence that comes out of and leads back to chaos. And there is a violence whose nature it is to form a cosmos. It is in this cosmos, building sense, that I wish to count you among the upbuilding, not among the violent men. Nothing can be done as long as the parliamentary system rules. God knows the Germans have no spark of talent for this system. Its prevalence I regard with the greatest misfortune, for it can only lead again and again into a more spring to taunt all plans for restoring the fatherland and lifting it up. My faith in the Germans has never wavered for a moment, but my hope, I must own, has sunk to a low ebb. At one stroke you have restored the state of my soul. Then in the hour of her deepest need, Germany has given birth to a Hitler. It proves her vitality, as do the influences emanating from him. For these two things, personality and influence, go together. May God protect you." Hitler took the old man's words to heart. Within a year, he was to take drastic measures to circumvent the parliamentary system and be done with democracy for the duration. False Dawn. History is made in the street. Joseph Goebbels. The story of the abortive Munich beer hall putsch of November 1924 has been documented in detail in numerous accounts of the rise and fall of Hitler's Reich, most of which agree that it was an embarrassing debacle for the impatient and ill-organized Nazi party. Hitler had stormed into the hall with his brown-shirted SA thugs, disrupting a meeting of rival revolutionaries led by Wilhelm Frick, and taking several officials hostage. But he failed to order the seizure of key strategic posts around the city, and after he foolishly allowed his hostages to leave with nothing but their word of honor, and they would go home quietly, they naturally raised the alarm. By the time the Nazis had taken the streets, there was an armed detachment waiting at the main square to greet them with a withering volley of rifle fire. General Ludendorff, the hero of the First World War, whom Hitler had persuaded to act as an authoritative figurehead, was allowed to retain his dignity, and was offered safe passage through the cordon of bristling bayonets, while the would-be revolutionaries scattered in all directions. Göring was seriously wounded, but managed to stagger to a local doctor who refused to treat him. Ironically, it was a Jewish family in an adjacent apartment who gave sanctuary to the former First World War fighter Reich and dressed his wound until he could be smuggled into temporary exile in Italy, where he numbed the pain and his bruised ego with increasing doses of morphine. It may have been this act of kindness which influenced Göring to later act in defense of certain Jews and declare, "I will decide who is a Jew and who is not." Hitler, meanwhile, had scuttled for safety to a waiting car, leaving his leaderless comrades to face the advancing troops. When the smoke had cleared, only Himmler remained. Apparently, he cut up such an unimposing figure that the troops simply ignored him, and he was able to walk to the nearest railway station where he caught the last train home. The trial of Adolf Hitler. At his trial, Hitler faced a panel of judges who were clearly in sympathy with his cause, or at least shared his distrust of the anti-monarchist Weimar Republic, which they believed was undermining traditional German values. He was allowed to commander the dock as his personal forum, from where he played to the packed press gallery with all bluster and bravado of a ham actor. The man who is born to be a dictator is not compelled. He wills it. He is not driven forward, but drives himself. The man who feels called upon to govern a people has no right to say, "If you want me, summon me, I will cooperate." No, it is his duty to step forward. He concluded this defense with an impassioned plea to Providence. "It is not you, gentlemen, who will pass judgment on us. You may pronounce us as guilty 1,000 times over, but the goddess of the eternal court of history will smile and tear to tatters the brief of the state prosecutor and the sentence of this court, for she acquits us." Hitler was sentenced to a nominal 5 years in the comparative comfort of Landsberg prison with panoramic view of the river Lech. He was even allowed to retain his deputy, the doggedly devoted Ruffel Hess, to act as his servant and secretary. Lucifer's servant. Hess was a brooding, beetle-browed introvert who, like Hitler, had lived under the shadow of a domineering father. When he saw Hitler speak in 1921, he recognized the qualities that were lacking in himself and was overjoyed to discover that the Führer responded to slavish hero worship. If Hess could be said to possess one quality, it was that of unquestioning obedience. "One man remains beyond all criticism," he told a hushed audience at Nuremberg in 1934. "That is the Führer. This is because everyone feels and knows he is always right and he will always be right." In 1945, when he stood on the dock of the International War Crimes Trial, held in that same city, his unfailing faith in his Führer remained undiminished. It was granted me for many years of my life to live and work under the greatest son whom my nation has produced. I regret nothing. Not everyone in the regime found him agreeable. He was described by his professor, Karl Hochhofer, as an unsettling presence. He was one student among others not particularly gifted of slow intellectual grasp and dull in his work. He is very dependent on emotions and passionately liked to pursue fantastic ideas. He was only influenced by arguments of no importance at the very limits of human knowledge and superstition. He also believed in the influence of the stars on his personal and political life. I was always disconcerted by the expression of his clear eyes, which had something somnambulistic about it. Fantastic ideas to which the Hochhofer referred, including astrology, clairvoyance, and alternative medicine, which were not strange in themselves, but it was Hess's application of the esoteric arts which led many in the party to label him as an eccentric. On one occasion, he wrote to every Gauleiter, district governor in the land, requesting a sample of soil from their region so that he could sprinkle it under his baby's cradle as part of an ancient magical blessing rite. Goebbels typically responded in his usual facetious way by offering a paving slab from Berlin. All right, let's go to our first music break before we move on to Mein Kampf, which is a section of the chapter. Yes, on this music break, we have the lovely and talented Miss Mia Savage with her group Antidote for Savages. And she'll be singing Our New Reality, Let Me Be Your Home, The Mirror in Crypto, and Your Skeleton. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
You're mine tonight. You're mine. You're mine. You're mine.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight it's story time with me, TessaTNT, and we have been reading Roland's Nazis and the Occult, the Dark Forces Unleashed by the Third Reich. And I figured out what was going on with Facebook. It doesn't go to their community standards, is what they're saying, or follow community standards, so that's why we got booted off there. But as I said before, this is for educational purposes only. And I know we have a lot of, really bad history, which this era was very, very bad. But if we don't learn our history, we're doomed to repeat it. So I think it's important that we know all we can about dictators, etc. All right. Mein Kampf. So long as Hess kept his fringe ideas to himself, Hitler was content to employ him. It was Hess who recorded his leader's muddled stream of racist invective, which was to be edited into some semblance of order by Max Amann, who published it as Mein Kampf, My Struggle. The original title, Berinhalb Jaar des Kampfs gegen Lug, Dummheit and Geekheit. 4.5 years of struggle against lies, stupidity, and cowardice. It was a clear indication of Hitler's agitated mental state at this time, and what Gerald Suster, author of Hitler in the Age of Horus, called the poverty of Hitler's intellect. It is revealing that the first part of the book is a highly derivative, incoherent rant peppered with blatant falsehoods, while the latter part shows at least a superficial understanding of the principles as geopolitics and the uses to which propaganda can be put. The former betrayed the influence of Eckert, while the latter was down to the influence of a respected academic who was a regular visitor of Hitler's rooms at Landsberg at the invitation of his former pupil, Rudolf Hess. Professor Karl Hochschofer, 1869 to 1945, had served with distinction in the Great War and had risen to the rank of general. It was rumored that he possessed clairvoyance and had been able to predict the precise time and location of enemy offenses and bombardments, which helped to halt several Allied advances. Surprisingly, perhaps, his military experiences infused his teaching with an aggressive pro-nationalist perspective. It told Hess and his fellow students, "I intend to teach political geography as a weapon to reawaken Germany to fulfill its destined greatness. I shall re-educate the whole nation to an awareness of the role of geography in history, so that every young German shall cease to think parochially, but think instead in terms of whole continents." It was Hochschofer who conceived the idea of Lebensraum, or living space, with which Hitler sought to excuse his insatiable appetite for conquest. And it was Hochschofer who can be credited with shaping Hitler's unfocused ramblings into a reasoned argument that brought nationalism out of the beer kellers and into the homes and workplaces of ordinary Germans. Hochschofer defended his part in shaping Nazi racist doctrine by arguing that he was merely one of a number of intellectuals to have influenced Hitler's thinking, but even his own son Albrecht was not fooled by his father's affected innocence. While awaiting execution for his part in the July 44 bomb plot, Albrecht penned a poem which ended with the following lines: "My father broke the seal, he sensed not the breath of the evil one, but set him free to roam the world." The Devil's Advocate. According to Trevor Ravenscroft, the professor's influence was even more insidious than history has acknowledged. Hochschofer awakened Hitler to the real motives of Lucifer, principality which possessed him so that he could become the conscious vehicle of its evil intent in the 20th century. It has become customary for crypto historians to recast Hochschofer as a closet Satanist who had assumed the role of Mephistopheles in order to instruct Hitler in a great esoteric doctrine derived in part from Madame Blavatsky's Atlantean-based theosophy and the Wotan-worshipping brotherhoods of the German Volkisch occultists. But in Mein Kampf, Hitler scorns the pseudo-pagan revivalists such as von List, whose sole satanic ceremony extended to burying empty wine bottles in the shape of a swastika on a mountaintop, while swearing an oath of allegiance to the old gods. I warn again and again against those wandering Volkisch scholars whose positive achievement is always nothing, but whose conceit cannot be matched. The characteristic of most of these natures is that they abound in old German heroism, that they reveal in the dim past stone axes, spears, and shields, but in their own essence, they are the greatest imaginable cowards. The same person who wave about toy swords carefully manufactured in imitation of old Germanic style and wear a prepared bearskin with bull's horns to cover their bearded heads, always preach for the present time only the spiritual battle and then run away from the sight of a communist blackjack. I got to know these people too well not to feel disgust at this miserable comedy. They make a ridiculous impression on the broad masses, and the Jew has every reason to spare these Volkisch comedians, to prefer them to the true fighters for the coming Reich. As final proofs of their total inability, these people pretend to understand everything better than anybody else, especially in regard to the so-called religious reforms of the ancient Germanic type. I have the feeling that they are sent by dark forces who do not desire the rebirth of our people, for their entire activity leads the Volk away from its fight against the common enemy, the Jew, in order that it may expend its energy in internal religious struggles. Tea and sympathy. It is doubtful that Haushofer initiated Hitler into an occult brotherhood, as several writers have claimed. The extent of his influence was limited to the degree of which he opened Hitler's eyes to the practical application of geopolitics, and the fact that he introduced the dictator-in-waiting to the concept of Lebensraum. It has been assumed that the professor was a secret Satanist simply because Hitler emerged from Landsberg prison in the autumn of 1924 with a renewed appetite for politics and in full command of forces which had previously been unfocused. This was entirely due to Haushofer's sobering influence in persuading Hitler to channel his energies into effecting change through nonviolent means. During his frequent visits, the professor had talked quietly of the need to undermine the foundations of the Republic by force of argument rather than force of arms. He explained that instead of quenching his thirst with beer after a rousing speech and risking becoming belligerent, we would be better off drinking sweet tea and remaining in control. From that moment on, Hitler refused to touch alcohol and became a vegetarian. He also taught Hitler how to present himself as an authoritative figure by dropping his trademark riding crop and adopting instead a statesmanlike posture. And he demonstrated the efficacy of pausing to formulate one's thoughts rather than speaking off the cuff. In effect, Haushofer groomed Hitler for public office. How effective he was in transforming the ragged agitator into an electable leader can be gleaned from the share of the votes that the Nazis accrued in the subsequent elections until January 30th, 1933, when they stormed to power and Hitler found himself a key player on the world stage. Lifting a curse. Hitler's accession was neither meteoric nor untroubled. The popularity of his party rose and fell throughout the 1920s in relation to the unemployment figures and the rate of inflation. When the German economy picked up in mid-decade, support for extremists on all sides dwindled, and the Nazis lost a significant number of seats in the Reichstag, the German parliament. When the shockwaves from the Depression hit Europe in 1929, public resentment against Jewish capitalists and fear of communist revolution brought indignant, fearful voters out in strength to protest. thus helping the Nazis to consolidate their early success. But on the eve of 1932 election, there was every reason to predict another setback for Hitler. President Hindenburg, the staunch elder statesman of the pre-war Germany, was losing patience with the extremist and had the power to suspend parliament if he believed that the stability of the republic was under threat. He made no effort to hide his disdain for Hitler, whom he considered an unprincipled, rabble-rousing upstart, and the Nazis themselves had given him sufficient cause to act. They had brought their beer-killer tactics into the corridors of power, where they publicly harangued opposition speakers, staged mass walkouts, and engaged in physical attacks on rival members. The cracks were beginning to appear within their ranks, threatening to divide the party into warring factions and worse. Senior German staff officers had confided their fears to Hindenburg concerning the growth of the SA, which had become a vast, unruly private army. Capitol on the 30th of October, Hitler's mistress, Eva Braun, attempted suicide for reasons that were never disclosed, although Hitler's bizarre and humiliating sexual demands and his stifling jealousy, no doubt, played a part. Thus, it was a distracted, demoralized Nazi leader who entered the political arena the following week, and as a result, the party lost more seats to their communist rivals. In desperation, Hitler summoned an old friend from his days in Vienna, the astrologer and practitioner of the occult, Erich John Hanussen. It was Hanussen, real name Herschelstein Schneider, a Jew who had taught the Nazi leader how to project his voice and use his hands to emphasize his emotions and keep the audience in his thrall. With his dyed blonde hair and aristocratic features, the former carnival performer was an imposing figure in the Berlin social scene, where he cast horoscopes and demonstrated his mastery of his latest obsession, hypnotism. It was in the former capacity that Hitler called Hanussen to his side that bleak winter day. The portents were bad. Hitler's horoscope revealed that he had been cursed, but by whom and for what reason, even Hanussen could not say. The curse may have been commissioned by a political rival or spurned and spiteful female admirer. Or it may have been self-inflicted, a suffocating aura of depression brought on by Eva's suicide attempt on his own agitated emotions. Whatever the origin, Hanussen had the answer. It was necessary for someone to travel to Hitler's hometown, and there find a mandrake root growing in a butcher's backyard. The mandrake was traditionally a potent aphrodisiac and an amulet of protection. The man-shaped tuber was said to emit a hideous shriek when torn out of the ground, and for that reason the witch or magician had to stop their ears with cotton or use a familiar, a cat or dog, to tear it out by the roots. Hitler's reaction to this pronouncement is not recorded, but Hanussen volunteered to journey to Austria. At midnight, on a night of the full moon, he tore up a mandrake from a suitable site. When he returned to Berlin on New Year's Day 1933, he was able to announce that the curse had been lifted, and Hitler's rise to power would resume forthwith. Within 30 days, Adolf Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. On February 27, he became dictator of the new Nazi state after persuading Hindenburg to approve the Enabling Act, granting the Nazis emergency powers. The pretext was the burning of the Reichstag, which was blamed on the communists but was undoubtedly committed by a party impatient for power. Hanussen had predicted the fire the night before during a seance at his palace of occultism, but he failed to foresee his own death just 6 weeks later by unknown hand in a forest outside of Berlin. Hitler claims the spear. Time of brutality approaches, of which we ourselves can have absolutely no concept. Indeed, we are already in the middle of it. We can only reach our goal if we have enough courage to destroy, laughingly to shatter what we once held holy, such as tradition, upbringing, friendship, and human love. Joseph Goebbels. On 12 March 1938, as Hitler prepared to enter Vienna to formally announce the annexation of Austria, his acolytes believed their Messiah's time had come. Hitler knew that until he held the Holy Lance in his hands, his grip on power could be loosened at any moment. History had taught him that all who seize authority by force had reason to believe that it might be wrested from their grasp, and experience had confirmed his fears. Only 4 years earlier, an assassin had attempted to kill him in the grounds of Göring's estate outside Berlin, but he succeeded only in wounding Himmler. The Reichsfuhrer SS was beside himself with gratitude for having been permitted by Providence to shed blood for his Führer, and would thereafter remind everyone he met that he was now Hitler's blood brother. The incident had been blamed on disaffection fractions within the SA who accused Hitler of having broken his promise to accord them equal pay and rank with the regular army. Hitler's response to the prospect of the coup was swift and terrible. 4-day-long settling of old scores known as the Night of the Long Knives was an anticipation of a similar attempt that Hitler chose to delay his triumphant entry into the capital of the Habsburg Empire. For although the threat of the counter-revolution was long past, there were rumors that a group of army officers would make a preemptive strike to decapitate the dictatorship and so prevent war. So while Hitler awaited his loyal Heinrich's assurance that a security sweep had been completed, he visited his birthplace near Linz and laid flowers on his mother's grave. When the Führer's motorcade finally made its way into imperial capital through the delirious crowds on either side of the Ringstrasse and onto the Heldenplatz, Hitler had the bittersweet satisfaction of returning to the spot where he had stood 30 years earlier as a hungry, penniless artist. The faces parted before him as he strode across the square into the imperial palace, and onto the balcony from which he would make an historic proclamation accepting his homeland into the Greater Reich. While the crowd surged forward, accepting his homeland into the Greater Reich, acclaiming him with cries of Sieg Heil and the Nazi salute. The object of their adoration had something more pressing on his mind: the need to take hold of the spirit of destiny. Ever since that day on the Hofburg in 1913, when Hitler had sensed his inexplicable force coursing through his body, it had lain inert on the faded red velvet cushion behind a glass cabinet, awaiting the next leaders courageous enough to invoke its power. Now that Hitler was only minutes from possessing it, he must have burned with fever like an addict within sight of his next fix. In his haste to secure the lance he had been borne through the ages by Europe's greatest conquerors, he brusquely refused an invitation to tour the city and to dine with the civic dignitaries. Even the prospect of lording it over the people who had refused to recognize his existence all those years ago held no appeal for him now. He had one thought and one thought alone: to possess the spear. The weight of must have been intolerable, but at least he knew that the precious relic had been secured by a detachment of the SS, personally supervised by Himmler. One of the only handful of men in all Germany beside himself who understood the true value of the spear. That night, while Austrian Nazis took the streets in raucous celebration of their success, and the citizens of the city of Waltzes indulged in a spate of Jew-baiting, which appalled even their Nazi masters, Hitler and his gang left their suite at the Imperial Hotel en route for the Hofburg. Inside, waiting to greet them, were Ernst Kaltenbrunner, Führer of Austria, Major Walter Buck, who was to ensure the legal transfer of the royal regalia to the Reich, and Wolfram von Sievers, head of the Nazi Occult Bureau. The entourage waited outside while Hitler and Himmler ascended the staircase to the treasure house, where the spear was on display. Minutes later, Himmler returned alone, leaving the Führer to fulfill the pledge he had made to himself in that very room 25 years before. To return and claim the Holy Lance for his own diabolical crusade, As Hitler stood before the trophies and the imperialist past, he knew that he now held more than history in his hand. He had the whole world within his grasp. Invoking a century-old precedent for the regalia's removal to Germany, the Holy Lance and the imperial crown jewels were removed from their caves, packed in crates, and transported in an armored train under SS guard to Nuremberg, where they were put on public view in the crypt of St. Catherine's Church, the site of the medieval song contest immortalized in Wagner's Die Meistersinger von Nuremberg. The most sacred relic in all Christendom was now in the dark heart of Hitler's evil empire. The Reckoning. Allied bombing in the latter years of the war prompted Kaltenbrunner to order the lance and regalia to be removed to the main vault in Kahn's Bank on the Königstrasse. But after the building too suffered damage in an air raid, Himmler decided to place the spear out of harm's way. He settled on an ambitious place to reopen a labyrinth of tunnels several feet under the castle, which had been sealed since the Middle Ages. Engineers were brought in and sworn to secrecy before being permitted to work on the project, widening and extending the ancient passageways, rigging out a concrete bunker in which they were to install air conditioning before sealing the complex behind a pair of massive steel doors. But as the Allies drew nearer, in March 1945, Himmler ordered the stolen treasures to be smuggled out of the city at night after a decoy convoy had made a show of loading wooden crates and driving them out of town on broad daylight with sirens blaring. The official story circulated among the inquisitive population as that the Habsburg treasury was to be unceremoniously dumped in Lake Zell near Salzburg. In fact, the imperial insignia had remained in the city not far from the original resting place, hidden underground in a vault at the Panierplatz. The idea was that they would remain there as a symbol of the rearguard resistance movement, codenamed Werewolf, which ultimately failed to materialize. Instead of war weary, Wehrmacht officers and war criminals fled to South America on false passports, where they and their stolen loot were welcomed with open arms by the brothers in brutality. Only the fanatical SS made a last stand to defend their heartland, 20,000 sacrificing themselves to honor their oath to their Führer, one group repulsing 9 assaults by the U.S. 45th Division in a vain attempt to deny the enemy the Nazi Congress Hall, scene of so many grandstanding speeches. When the fighting finally ceased on 20 of April, nothing but rubble-strewn shell of the historic city remained. 10 days later, a platoon of GIs moving through Oberenschmied-Gasse, the street below the castle, asked to discover the original hiding place of the regalia, which had been exposed to the daylight by the recent artillery barrage, posted a guard in front of the steel doors of the vault, and returned to the castle, which now served as the headquarters of the American 7th Army, to report their find. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. An hour and a half later, the Americans entered the vault and gasped in astonishment at the shoulder-high heaps of Nazi loot, which spilled out onto the floor. In the center was the altar that had been taken for safekeeping from St. Catherine's Church, and upon it rested a narrow wooden casket. Someone had evidently failed to recognize the significance of the spear, and had transferred only the imperial crown jewels to the second site under Panierplatz. The Americans had acquired the Holy Lance. Several hundred miles away in Berlin at 3:30 p.m., Adolf Hitler relinquished his claim to the spear and shot himself through the mouth. His mistress, Eva Braun, lay lifeless by his side. She had swallowed cyanide. In contrast to their dream of a Wagnerian state funeral, Hitler and his mistress were carried out of the Reich chancellery bunker and cremated in the nearest shell hole, while Goebbels served as the sole witness. After just 12 years, Hitler's 1,000-year Reich had come to an ignominious end. Chapter 3. Hitler, medium or magician. Power which has always started the greatest religions and political avalanches in history rolling has from time memorial been the magic power of the spoken word. Broad masses of the people can only be moved by the power of speech. If I approach the masses with reasoned arguments, they will not understand me. In the mass meeting, their reasoning power is paralyzed. What I say is like an order given under hypnosis. It is evident from Hitler's own words that he did not acknowledge the existence of evil or the devil, despite having been raised a Catholic, but like so many psychologically flawed individuals, he believed that his Weltanschauung worldview was unshakable and that he was incapable of being wrong. Well, I think he was wrong there. He was, to use a modern psychological term, the typical right man who will cut off his own nose to spite his face. Like a Chicago gang leader, Hitler held his unruly mob together as he did his country through the twin pillars of totalitarian power, fear and adoration. His simple strategy of divide and conquer ensured that his ministers were too busy jostling for position, defending their own territory, and competing for his favors to conspire for his removal. He achieved this by giving the same responsibilities to more than one minister, which generated personal enmity and distrust. Goering, dislike, Speer, and Ribbentrop, Goebbels, and Bormann, Goebbels, loathed Goring, Ribbentrop, and Bormann, Ribbentrop, couldn't tolerate anyone, and in turn they all despised him. It was the perfect formula for ensuring unquestioning obedience, but it meant that the system was rotten from the inside and fated to fail. The only question was when those who had the courage to act did so too late and ineffectively. The Feldbaum plot of July 1940 only stifled the common soldier's resolve to fight on to the bitter end. He assumed that the Führer's life had begun and again been saved by divine intervention. At Nuremberg, Speer put Hitler's hypnotic hold over the German people down to purely rational means. Hitler's dictatorship differed in one fundamental point from all its predecessors in history. This was the first dictatorship in the present period of technical development, a dictatorship which made complete use of all technical means for the domination of its own country. Through the technical means like the radio and the loudspeaker, 80 million people were deprived of independent thought. It was thereby possible to subject them to the will of one man. But the French rationalist philosopher Denis de Roquemont was prepared to accept a supernatural explanation. Some people believe, from having experienced in his presence a feeling of horror and an impression of supernatural power, that he is the seed of hierarchical spirits which can descend into any ordinary mortal and occupy him. Where do the superhuman powers he shows on these occasions come from? It is quite obvious that a force of this kind does not belong to the individual, and indeed could not even manifest itself unless the individual were of no importance except as the vehicle of a force for which their psychology has no explanation. What I'm saying would be the cheapest form of romantic nonsense, were it not that what has been established by this man, or rather through him, is a reality that is one of the wonders of the century. The superhuman powers de Roquemont refers to are not, however, unnatural, nor should they be credited to the influence of a discarnate entity. Hitler's capacity for revitalizing his allies and subordinates has been replicated by true mystics such as Gurdjieff, who developed the ability which Hitler appears to have generated unconsciously. On one occasion, a male student came to the guru complaining of exhaustion and was revitalized by an infusion of energy consciously directed from mentor to pupil, as one would conduct electricity from a charger to a bent battery. The student noted, however, that Gurdjieff was visibly drained by the process and had to retire to recharge himself using meditation. Historians are now extremely reluctant to use rationing as a reference, but he is useful as a source of anecdotal evidence, the following being a case in point. He wrote, person close to me told me that Hitler wakes up in the night screaming and in convulsions, calls for help and appears to be half paralyzed. He is seized with a panic that makes him tremble until the bed shakes. He utters confused and unintelligible sounds, gasping as if on the point of suffocation. The same person described to me one of these fits with details that I would refuse to believe had I not complete confidence in my informant. Hitler was standing up in his room, swaying and looking all around him as if he were lost. It's he, he groaned. He's come for me. His lips were white, he was sweating profusely. Suddenly he uttered a stream of meaningless figures, then words and scraps of sentences. It was terrifying. He used strange expressions strung together in bizarre disorder. Then he relapsed again into silence, but his lips still continued to move. He was then given a friction and something to drink. Then suddenly he screamed, There, over in the corner, he's there!" all the time stamping his feet and shouting. Quieting him, he was assured that nothing extraordinary had happened, and finally he gradually calmed down. After that, he slept for a long time and became normal again. Given the nature of the allegations against Rockies, we have to assume this is yet another example of Nazi myth-making. Certainly the allusions to unintelligible sounds, meaningless figures, and scraps of sentences sound like a poor attempt to convey the words of power by someone who clearly has no idea what a real magician would say or do. As for the exhortations suggestive of a demonic presence, he's over there, it is evident that it's yet another pitiable, utterly unconvincing attempt to convey horror. Unfortunately, such a transparent attempt to make the non-entities of the Nazi regime more exotic figures only serve to distract from the real source of their power. Power of the word. It was surely no coincidence that Winston Churchill was serving as Britain's Prime Minister at the time that his nemesis was urging the German people to world domination. Churchill was the antithesis of the ranting Austrian bully, while Hitler spat bile and well-read and erudite grandson of the 7th Duke of Marlborough expressed the mood of the moment as eloquently as any of England's greatest poets, raising the morale of a nation and stiffening its sinews for the struggle ahead. In contrast, Hitler wielded the spoken word like a blunt instrument, bludgeoning his enemies into submission. He shared Goebbels' belief that if one told a lie often enough, and with conviction, the public would eventually accept it as the truth. How did he manage to defy President Lincoln's famous truism and fool all his people all the time? Many who witnessed his slow-burning speeches at first hand were convinced that he had allowed himself to be possessed by a power greater than himself. Rockies, who was an astute observer of Hitler's character despite having allegedly fabricated his intimate conversations with the leader, wrote, "One cannot help thinking of him as a medium, for most of the time mediums are ordinary, insignificant people. Suddenly they are endowed with what seems to be supernatural powers, which sets them apart from the rest of humanity. These powers are something outside their true personality. The medium is possessed. Once the crisis is past, they fall back again into mediocrity." It was in this way beyond any doubt that Hitler was possessed by forces outside of himself, almost demonical forces of which the individual man, Hitler, was only a temporary vehicle. The mixture of the banal and the supernatural created that insupportable duality of which power was conscious in his presence. It was like looking at a bizarre face whose expressions seemed to reflect an unbalanced state of mind coupled with a disquieting impression of hidden power. This apparent ability to channel another voice, whether from his own subconscious or an external source, was evidently something Hitler had developed from an early age. His childhood friend August Kubizek was struck by the transformation which occurred when Adolf was inspired. It was as if another being spoke out of his body and moved him as such as it did me. It was not at all a case of a speaker carried away by his own words. On the contrary, I rather felt as though he himself listened with astonishment any motion to what burst forth from him with elemental force. Like floodwaters breaking their dikes, his words burst from him. He conjured up in grandiose, inspiring pictures his own future, that of his people. He was talking of a mandate which, one day, he would receive from the people to lead them from servitude to the heights of freedom, a special mission which would one day be entrusted to him. Gregor Strasser, a comrade from the beer keller days, was also struck by the physical transformation which overtook Hitler whenever he spoke. Listen to Hitler, and one suddenly has a vision of one who will lead mankind to glory. A light appears in a dark window. A gentleman with a comic mustache turns into an archangel. Then the archangel flies away, and there is Hitler sitting down, bathed in sweat with glassy eyes. Gregor's younger brother Otto was near the mark when he observed. He touches each private wound on the raw, liberating the mass unconscious, expressing its innermost aspirations, telling it what it wants to hear. Hitler's effect on adoring audiences has been well documented. Kurt Ludeck heard him speak in 1922. I studied his slight, pale man, his brown hair parted on one side and falling again and again over his sweating brow. Threatening and beseeching, with small pleading hands and flaming steel blue eyes, he had the look of a fanatic. Presently, my critical faculty was swept away. He was holding the masses and me with them, under a hypnotic spell by the sheer force of his conviction. British theologian Ernestine Amy Bueller witnessed at first hand the effect the Fuhrer had on his followers. In her autobiography, Darkness Over Germany, in 1943, she recalled her impressions of the Nuremberg rallies. I was sitting surrounded by thousands of SA men, and as Hitler spoke, I was most interested at the shouts and more often the muttering exclamations of the men around me, who were mainly workmen or lower middle class types. "He speaks for me! He speaks for me!" I thought, he knows how I feel. Many of them seemed lost to the world around them and were probably unaware of what they were saying. One man in particular struck me as he leant forward with his head in his hands and with a sort of convulsion sob said, "Gott sei Dank. He understands." My attention was attracted by the face of a young man who was leading the cries. His arms were outstretched and his face wide as he worked himself into a frenzy. And when the Fuhrer came, there was ecstasy in his face such as I have never seen and should never expect to see outside an asylum. As I hurried away to go back to the hotel, I heard uncontrolled sobbing beside me, and I saw it was a middle-aged woman in a bath chair. "Now you can take me away. I will die happily. I have seen the face of the Fuhrer. Germany will live." Hitler's private secretary, Total Jung, acknowledged her Fuhrer's mysterious hold over women. As a man, he didn't look attractive at all. It was more that he personified power. That was his fascination, and also his presence. He had a way of looking at you with those eyes, which could really set you alight. And somehow he was a mythical figure for women. He was a savior, and he gave off an aura of power, and that impressed women like a messiah, perhaps. The mystery of Hitler's mass appeal becomes self-evident when one knows the circumstances of his childhood neurosis, which centered on a hatred of his sadistic, overbearing father and his over-identification of his indulgent, masochistic mother. The American psychoanalyst Walter Lang, who was commissioned to rewrite an in-depth analysis of Hitler's nature for the Psychological Warfare Department of the OSS, later the CIA, concluded that Hitler wooed his audience by unconsciously appealing to their feminine nature. In regard his audience as fundamentally feminine in character, his appeal is direct at a repressed part of their personalities. In many of the German people, there seems to be a strong feminine masochistic tendency, which is usually covered over by more virile characteristics, but which finds partial gratification in submissive behavior, discipline, sacrifice, etc. Nevertheless, it does seem to disturb them, and they try to compensate for it by going to the other extreme of courage, pugnaciousness, determination, etc. Most Germans are unaware of this hidden part of their personalities and would deny its existence vehemently if such an insinuation were made. Hitler, however, appeals to it directly, and he is in an excellent position to know what goes on in that region because in him, the side of his personality was not only conscious but dominant throughout his earlier life. Lang makes another perceptive observation when he points out that Hitler's repressed sexuality had the effect of directing his vital energy and sensuality into his eyes. Lang makes another perceptive observation when he points out that Hitler's repressed sexuality, yes, I just read that. When a regression of this kind takes place, the sexual instinct usually becomes diffuse, and many organs, which have yielded some sexual stimulation in the past, become permanently invested with sexual significance. The eyes, for example, may become a subtle substitute sexual organ, and seeing then takes on a sexual significance. This seems to have happened on Hitler's case, for a number of informants have commented on his delight in witnessing striptease and nude dancing numbers on the stage. For all of this, it is evident that seeing has a special sexual significance for him. Probably accounts for his hypnotic glance, which has been the subject of comment by so many writers. Some have reported that at their first meeting, Hitler fixated them with his eyes as if to bore through them. It is also interesting that when the other person meets his stare, Hitler turns his eyes to the ceiling and keeps them there during the interview. Then, too, we must not forget that in the moment of crisis, on hearing of Germany's surrender in 1918, his hysterical attack manifested itself in blindness. Talk of magic, mediumship, and messianic aura serves only to divert attention away from the true source of Hitler's power. A genuine gift for rabble-rousing oratory which came from deep within. The French writer Robert Bouchiez alluded to it, recalling, "I looked into his eyes, the eyes of a medium in a trance. Sometimes there seemed to be a sort of ectoplasm. The speaker's body seemed to be inhabited by something fluid. Afterwards he shrank again to insignificance, looking small and even vulgar. He looked exhausted. His batteries were run down." This suggests that the source of Hitler's personal magnetism is his own dynamic life force and was not the result of malevolent possession. He had unconsciously unleashed the vital energy we all possess, which the Chinese call qi, and Hindus prana, and the Nazi occultist vril. But instead of focusing it and centering it in himself as a practitioner of yoga would do, he unleashed it in a torrent on those he desired to subdue or influence, draining himself in the process. Lacking the knowledge of the adept who understands how to generate their inner power cells, the subtle centers which the Hindus call chakras, wills. Hitler was used up, a spent force. In the early years, he could draw on his audiences and admirers to restore his energy, but after 1942, he made few public appearances, and his belief in his own infallibility was challenged by several assassination attempts and the significant strategic losses in Russia, which led him to retreat further and further from reality. After the July bomb plot of 1944, his energies turned inwards and he was literally consumed by his own demons, hatred, self-loathing, and paranoid hysteria. In effect, natural laws and his own temperament dictated that Hitler was fated to fail. Albert Speer witnessed Hitler's ability to subdue his subordinates by sheer force of will. They were all under his spell, blindly obedient and with no will of their own. Whatever the medical term for this phenomenon might be, I noticed during my activities as architect that to be in his presence for any length of time made me tired, exhausted, and void. Admiral Donitz was also aware of the Führer's innate capacity for draining people of their vitality, and for this reason he distanced himself physically from his leader. I purposefully went very seldom to his headquarters, for I had the feeling that I would thus best preserve my power of initiative, and also because after several days at headquarters, I always had the feeling that I had to disengage myself from his powers of suggestion. I'm telling you this because in this connection, I was doubtless more fortunate than his staff, who were constantly exposed to his power and personality. Hitler was equally capable of infusing others with his energy when it served this purpose. He succeeded in reviving the dejected and devitalized to Deuce. By putting every ounce of nervous energy into the effort, I succeeded in pushing Mussolini back onto the rails. In those 4 days, the Deuce underwent a complete change. When he got out of the train on his arrival, he looked like a broken old man. When he left again, he was in high fettle, ready for anything. Even after the assassination attempt of 1944, which had left him badly shaken, Hitler's capacity to dominate those around him by sheer force of personality remained undiminished. Karl Bohm Tettelbach, General Staff Officer of the Wolf's Lair headquarters, said, "He impressed me and made me tense, but the flair Hitler had was unusual. He could revive somebody who was almost ready for suicide and make him feel that he could carry the flag and die in battle. Very strange." Alright, well, let's go to our second music break. On this break, once again, we have the lovely and talented Miss Mia Savage with her group Antidote for Savages. And she's going to be singing to Your Grave, Not a Phase, Bury Me in Heaven, and The Bottom Line. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
Did I sleep too long to put me with you? What I got singing till you cry for me. I'll be singing till you cry someday.
right now between fear and love. Just a choice right now between fear and love.
Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. This evening we've been doing story time with me, TessaTNT. Reading a book that Facebook did not like, but it was The Nazis and the Occult, The Dark Forces Unleashed by the Third Reich. And this is written by Paul Roland, and as I said before, this was for educational purposes only. I do not support or condone like anything that these guys did, Hitler, his crew, whatever. But yeah, unfortunately, Facebook doesn't want us to educate ourselves. Yeah, I figured instead of reading for a third hour on the topic, we'd check out a creepy video together. Let me get rid of this banner really quick. All right. So, this creator is Frank, but his channel is called Franco TV. Make sure you go over there and subscribe. He also has a travel thing that he does, so he's in South America a lot, which is pretty interesting, like the different places he gets to go and see. And I do believe that this video, which is his newest one, is also down in South America. Originally, he's from Florida, I believe, but yeah, he did a little bit in the United States, but then just decided to go South America. I don't know. Maybe it's cheaper and he could save up more money or something, but there's so much activity down there. It's amazing. And also, a lot of the places down there as far as cemeteries, like, you know, desecrated tombs and graves, etc., etc. Like, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, there's tons of paranormal stuff, and Franco gets some really, really good evidence. It's insane. He's been on Top 5 and other shows like so much, but yeah, make sure you go over to Franco TV and subscribe like me. All right, let's do it.
It looks like an Annabelle doll and teddy bears. It's one of these dolls. See, that's a real doll.
This looks like it's an American. The heck? Yeah, he posted this 3 hours ago. We'll see what's up. too, like guys that go out by themselves and do this, like I don't think I'd be brave enough. I gotta have backup. I gotta have somebody with me. But yeah, Franco, pretty brave.
I'm now entering the Mayflower Hall.
Yeah, so he's back in America, looks like. I have seen investigations at this place.
Now, if I haven't told you guys before, I am coming into this entire complex alone. And this is a pretty eerie, spooky place.
And there was another video I was going to share, but I didn't want to go on YouTube and have our Spreaker peeps be able to finish the show with us. And Spreaker peeps, if you want, come on over to YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, watch this with us. Or you can just listen. It's up to you.
So I'm guessing these are like the patient rooms for Penhurst. I am also slightly terrified at what's behind every corner. I'm not sure what's the deal with the blinking lights.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't have epilepsy. Because that will not be good. Hey, I got Riz. What was that? What the heck was that? What? Oh, that light flashing still. That's so creepy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yo, this is terrifying. Alright, I don't want to get you guys dizzy, but I legit just heard a sound. Now these seats, some of them actually have restraints to keep the patients at Penhurst that were slightly violent or that were in danger to themselves. They would actually lock them into these seats.
From mental and physical abuse, mistreatment of the weakest among the society, to extreme overcrowding, Pennyhurst Asylum was home to many tears and screams that went uncared for. The chilling secret that its crumbling walls bore witness to are still a matter of mystery, with paranormal investigators flocking to it to decode its past resident stories. Penhurst was a mistake from day one, but it was a mistake made by all of us.
Oh, come on. I don't know why it's so dark now. Come on. There we go.
But his light was about to go out. Could you imagine?
As I search from room to room, things start to wake up.
These are other little rooms for all the other children that were in this place. Holy crap. Alright, there looks to be what looks like an Annabelle doll. And teddy bears. What the hell is that?
It looks like
Are
a
those
baby in a drawer.
X-rays?
It's crazy.
Look how it looks like in complete darkness.
Crazy. It's a baby in the drawer. What the heck?
Up here is where apparently you get a lot of activity. Being in this floor, I'm going to be completely dark and probably just going to have a little flashlight pointing down through the hallways, I guess. I'm going to turn this light off and I'm going to ask questions while I sit here. I don't mean any problems with anyone that is here. I'm only here to explore and to see if I can make contact with anyone. Are these your dolls here? Is this Annabelle? Or not Annabelle, but are these the toys that you play with? You can hear footsteps. Is that you moving around? Here, I'm gonna bring you guys with me so that way you guys can see what I see down this hallway. Alright. Right now I'm looking down the hallway. You can hear what sounds like movement down there.
What does that mean? The heck?
Can you give me some sort of sign that you're there? Can you make a noise? I'll turn off the light.
I don't know about you guys, but it sounded like to me like a motor, but it could have also been somebody going, I don't know if you heard that, but I did. It should be. Oh, Jim.
Holy shit. I can hear a door opening down there.
Heard it too, buddy. That's so creepy. It's so creepy.
I'm getting a ton of sounds down there, including the door that just opened. It sounds like it came from the end of the hallway. I'm gonna start making my way there. I'm coming over there, don't I don't mean anything wrong. I completely come in peace. Holy crap. I'm trying not to shake the flashlight because I'm so nervous. Oh my god, I didn't even know this was... Whoa. What the hell is that noise? I don't know if you guys saw that from the camera, but a ball literally just rolled out.
Yeah, that room's pretty active.
What? I'm freaking out right now.
I've never been there, but it's on my bucket list. But I have seen several different teams go in there and do it, and this place is pretty dang active. I'm trying to remember Penhurst. Yeah, it's not the same place I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about there was that big old thing of wasn't pertussis. I can't even think of the name of it. I'll think of it here in a minute.
What the hell am I hearing? Are you playing with me? Can you tell me your name? God. Freaking beetle.
Hit a whistle. Oh, did you see that orb?
Can you move the ball? I can.
I heard, oh shit. Sorry. I heard somebody go, and then I saw orb to his right. I don't know if you guys saw that. But it's pretty cute.
There's little beetles everywhere. Whoa. The bow's gone. I am shitting bricks right now. I'm about ready to run, and I don't run.
No, he doesn't. Don't run, Franco. I think I've only seen him run once.
That
He
ball
hates running.
I want you guys to see there's nobody in this. I want you guys to see that there's nobody in this room. See? Look, I'll turn this way. There's nobody in. Whoa. Yeah, I'm freaking out. Holy crap, I'm having sounds from everywhere.
The heck is that? With that wagon? A freaking tricycle or something? What crap is that?
Please help us get out of here. What? Please help us get out of here. Doesn't anyone have a heart? I shower for 13 boys.
What?
And boys, it does not work.
What was that? Imagine if you saw like a shadow person or something across the hallway there. Knock, knock.
Get out, I just heard a knock. The amount of responses that I'm getting here is ridiculous. Again, they called them children and there were some that were adults.
Yeah, very disrespectful.
Oh, I'm ready to run. I'm not even seeing anything, but I'm hearing noises. I am so is coming from within the rooms. If I go over there, I hear things behind me. Candy. Holy shit. I was talking to the tour guide, and me and her also heard a faint knocking. Holy crap.
The house was meant to keep them in. Once they came,
It's a mental asylum. I was thinking about it's not Penrose, just that really, really big building, and it was because of tuberculosis. That's why people would go there, but yeah, this is something totally different. Both of those are on my bucket list. You know what?
they never left.
Yeah, it's so sad. Creepy.
I forgot about these tunnels, and I wanted to show you guys to it. There's 3 of them that are located in 3 areas in this premises. Let's go ahead and check out these underground tunnels, and then we'll make our way to the other areas. Let's go. I'm trying to hold this camera as still as I can so it doesn't make too much noise. Alright, right now I am underground. There's a lot of toys and kid stuff. And another ball.
What the heck is that? It's a doll. Looks like she's ready for a winter walk. Yeah.
Jesus.
You hear that? No, it sounded like that.
That is terrifying. I hate mannequins because I think they're real.
No, that one's obviously not.
Jesus Christ, that thing is creepy. And, see what else is out there. They used to carry bodies out here. So, under the tunnels here, so. Yeah, I'm a little spooked. So apparently there's dolls here. And, oh my god, this is huge. I just don't want to see a mannequin now that I've seen one. What is this? Is this like a church? Holy crap. You can see handprints on the walls. Fuck.
English, Franco language.
Pay attention to the cart handle. As I was editing, I noticed that the handle found its way to the floor
Favorite toys.
without me noticing.
Whatever's down there.
Holy shit. That scared the shit out of me. I don't even know what that was. I had something covering my face from all the dust and everything just messed up. I don't even know if that was a doll, but that sounded really close. Is that a bone? Holy shit, that's a real bone.
What the heck? What?
This is somebody's leg.
No.
I just touched somebody's leg.
Gross, dude. Ew. What the heck? It's so weird.
I'm actually panicking right now. I never thought I would touch it. I didn't think it was going to be real.
He's seen so many bones and stuff. That's fine.
Hello?
He usually carries like a
Sorry, I should have whispered.
tool with him.
Hello?
Move things because there could be magic on a lot of the things he finds.
I
It's
am
like
freaking
pictures,
creeping out.
written spells and stuff like that. And black magic.
What does that say? I said Moravia. I'm sorry if I'm breathing hard. But I can't breathe. The air is really thick down here. What the hell is this? Holy shit. Look how foggy it is in here.
What's on the ground? Hold on. Hold
It's
on.
all bad.
Oh, the handle fell, I think.
Is it okay? Look how foggy it is in here.
Yeah, the handle moved.
I just saw a bat. Is it okay that I'm in here? Come on. Light up. Light up, buddy. Hold on. My light is not There we go. I'm having problems.
Oh, what the heck was that?
No way. Can you move it again? Holy shit.
Did it drown or something?
I am legitimately freaking out right now. Can you tell me your name? I'm Frank. I'm just watching my back real quick. I'm sorry for moving the camera a lot. Alright, I want you guys. I gotta be careful. Look.
I think he's really stressed out. He usually doesn't breathe. It's real quickly.
Got bugs flying on me. Look. There's nothing. Nothing is attached. This thing just
It's
moved.
freaking loud in my ear, man.
Can you move it again?
It's gonna do it with you standing right there. I don't know if it was him or somebody else where it did move, like, right next to him.
Can you move it again for me? I'm gonna actually go back over here and see if I can move it again. That freaking man in there is so creepy. Alright. Can you move it again? What the hell is that?
That's what he's saying.
Holy shit. Oh my god. This place is freaking terrifying. Holy shit. I don't even know what is doing that sound. If it's one of these dolls.
It's a ghost or something.
Can you make the noise again? That is terrifying. I'm gonna leave now. I have a lot to explore. Alright. I'm actually gonna head out towards upstairs. I have 3 more hours here, and I have to go check out 2 more other locations here to make a part 1 and a part 2 series.
What the heck?
It's one of the dolls.
Are you serious? Wait.
then it just shuts off. I have never seen that before. And there's a human bone on it too. That's a human bone. That's as thick and it's heavy.
It's a doll. It's something else.
All right. At this point now, I gotta get going to the other locations before I run out of time. I still have so much more to show you guys.
Yeah. So that was Franco from Franco TV. Please, like I said, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. It very much is. But yeah. Thanks again, you guys, so much for hanging out with me tonight. And like I said, if you didn't catch yesterday's show, you should definitely check it out. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Today's show on Facebook got canceled. Holy shnikes. Yeah, hold on. I just accidentally pressed the wrong button. Oops. No. But yeah, thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies, on Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Radio, wherever you're listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time, and I can't wait to do it again. Next week, we're still looking into different guests. I'm trying to get Dr. Christopher Macklin, I believe his name is. And yeah, he's going to be very interesting if we can get him in. It'll be epic. Every time with me, TessaTNT, and we might even do some trippy TikToks instead. So let me know on We Are Paradox Media at gmail.com, and yeah, let me know what you want to do. Do you want to do more story time? I know this book can be it's a pretty crazy topic, and I know people can be sensitive to it, and so that's not a good thing. But like I said before, if we don't learn our history, we're doomed to repeat it, and we really don't need another bad thing like Hitler did happening. I can't even think of the words to use because I'm afraid of getting disbanded from YouTube, etc. But don't forget, you guys, we're all in this together. Together we can make the world a bit better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Until next time, 99 Love and Light, have a wonderful rest of your weekend and your week, and I will see you back here. Same crazy time, same crazy place. Thanks again so much for hanging out.